This cute family photo from 1964 is currently causing a Category 5 Florida man level of chaos in the historical archives, and the authorities really wish you'd just scroll past it. Meet the Solway Firth Spaceman, the ultimate "who invited this guy" of the 20th century. Jim Templeton just wanted a nice pic of his daughter in her Sunday best, but he ended up capturing evidence so spicy it sent the CIA into a full-blown panic. The official story? It's just a camera glitch. Total garbage. If it was just a glitch, why were classified records regarding a top-secret nuclear missile test suddenly nuked from the timeline? The truth is, while Jim was playing Instagram dad in a field, two identical beings were busy walking onto a restricted launch pad halfway across the planet, causing a multi-million-dollar military operation to go Alt F4 in real time. The government handled the fallout with all the grace of a crypto bro explaining a rug pull at 3 a.m. We'll get to the part where the actual men in black showed up at Jim's house to gaslight him into oblivion in a minute. But first, we have to look at the one detail in this photo that proves the official explanation is about as reliable as gas station sushi. Jim Templeton was just a local fireman, a regular guy who probably spent his weekends complaining about the lawn and wondering why gas was so expensive. He takes a photo of his daughter Elizabeth, gets it developed at the local chemist, and boom, there's a 7-foot-tall intergalactic tourist photobombing the shot. Now, the skeptics, the same people who think the DMV is actually efficient, claim this was just Jim's wife Annie walking away with her back to the camera. They say the overexposure made her blue dress look white and spacemanish. Nice try, Janet, but Jim and his daughter both swore on a stack of tax returns that nobody else was in that field. No Karens demanding to speak to the manager of the meadow, no hikers, nothing. And if it was just a blurry mom, why did the Kodak film experts, the guys who literally invented seeing is believing, conclude that the film hadn't been tampered with? This wasn't a 1960s Photoshop job. This was a physical anomaly captured on silver halide. The local police treated Jim like he'd had one too many pints, but the suits in London and Washington? They weren't laughing. In fact, they were sweating harder than a guy trying to explain his browser history to his fiancée. We'll see the terrifying evidence of what happened at a missile range in Australia on that exact same day in a second. But first, we need to talk about the two mysterious men in dark suits who pulled up to Jim's house in a sleek black Jaguar. Before Will Smith made the look cool, Jim Templeton got a visit from the real deal. Two guys in a black Jaguar who called themselves Number 9 and Number 11 showed up at his door. No badges, no IDs, just a vibe that said, "I work for a department that doesn't exist." They didn't come to ask for a signed copy of the photo. They came to convince Jim he was hallucinating. They drove him back to the marsh and started asking oddly specific questions about the other spacemen. Not the one in the photo, the others. When Jim told them he didn't see anyone else, they didn't say, "Oh, my bad." They got furious. They treated Jim like a guy trying to return a used mattress to Costco without a receipt. They called him a liar and drove off, leaving him stranded in the middle of nowhere. Why the aggression? Because Jim had accidentally documented a glitch in the Matrix that the higher-ups were desperate to command Z out of existence. See, the spaceman wasn't just a British problem. At that exact moment, the CIA was deep in the pockets of the UK's missile program, and they were seeing things on their monitors that made the Cold War look like a playground dispute. We're about to dive into the Woomera Incident, where a multi-million-dollar missile test was aborted because of two uninvited guests on the launch pad. But first, we need to talk about why the US military was secretly babysitting a rocket in the Australian outback. While Jim was snapping photos in a soggy British marsh, halfway across the globe in the Australian outback, a bunch of scientists were about to play a high-stakes game of nuclear Jenga. This was the Woomera test range, and they were prepping the Blue Streak missile, basically the British version of SpaceX, but with more tweed and significantly more cigarettes. This wasn't just a UK project. The US was hovering over their shoulders like a Karen watching a neighbor's construction crew, tracking the telemetry from classified monitoring stations. Minutes before the countdown hit zero, the technicians staring at the CCTV monitors did a collective double-take. Two figures were standing right there on the launch pad. They were tall, wearing white pressurized suits, and looked exactly like the spaceman photobombing Jim's daughter. The launch was aborted immediately. You don't just fire a multi-million-dollar rocket when Intergalactic Steve and his buddy are standing in the blast zone. When the security teams rushed the pad, the figures were gone. No footprints, no heat signatures, just empty desert and a lot of very confused guys with high-level security clearances. The evidence was so undeniable that a report was sent straight to the top. But instead of investigating, the authorities treated the logs like a Twitter thread they wanted to delete. We'll get to the part where the government tried to claim these 7-foot-tall beings were just stray sheep in a minute. But first, you need to see the restricted memo that links the Solway photo directly to this aborted missile test. The authorities didn't just ignore the Woomera sighting. They tried to gaslight the scientists with an explanation so dumb it makes flat earthers look like Mensa members. They claimed the tall, white-suited beings on the launch pad were, wait for it, stray sheep. Yes, because everyone knows sheep are 7 feet tall, walk on 2 legs, and wear metallic radiation suits. It's the kind of excuse you give when you've already spent the budget on research and don't want the auditors asking why ET is messing with the hardware. But here's where it gets spooky. A restricted communication link was established between the UK's Ministry of Defence and the US monitoring stations. They weren't comparing notes on livestock. They were freaking out because the photo Jim took in Cumberland and the footage from the Australian desert showed the exact same entity. It's like a cosmic Find My iPhone, where the location is everywhere at once. The government realized they couldn't just cancel the photo, so they went for the memory hole strategy. They needed to get their hands on the original negatives before the public realized that the Cold War wasn't just US versus Russia, it was Earth versus someone else. We'll look at the restricted laboratory analysis that vanished from the files in a second, but first, we need to talk about why the CIA was suddenly so interested in a fireman's vacation photos. Why was the CIA sniffing around a British fire station? Because the US had a vested interest in the blue streak. It was the tech that would eventually help put satellites in orbit to spy on, well, everyone. When word of the spaceman photo hit the wires, the CIA didn't see a ghost. They saw a security breach. They weren't worried about little green men. They were worried about what those men were doing to the most sensitive tech on the planet. Jim, being a law-abiding citizen, unlike that one guy in your neighborhood who definitely hides his income from the IRS, handed over his original negatives for analysis. The official lab report? Inconclusive. But the leaked version of the story? The analysts were reportedly losing their minds. They found that the figure wasn't on top of the film like a double exposure. It was in the film, captured by the light in a way that defied 1960s physics. It was like trying to explain a TikTok filter to a pilgrim. The technology to fake this simply didn't exist. So, the government did what it does best. It restricted the files until they essentially ceased to exist. We're about to see the nightmare evidence that suggests there wasn't just one figure, but a whole team hidden in the background of that day. But first, we need to talk about why the local police suddenly lost the records of those 2 men in the black Jaguar. When Jim went to the local police to report number 9 and number 11, the 2 guys who treated him like a low-level NPC in a Bethesda game, the cops gave him a look that was 10% pity and 90% "I'm not paid enough for this." They checked the records. No black Jaguar, no federal agents in the area, no record of any Department of Unexplained photobombs. It was like Jim had been ghosted by the government on a cosmic scale. The local files didn't just go missing, they were erased with a surgical precision that would make a Silicon Valley data wiper jealous. But the real nightmare wasn't that the men were gone, it was what they left behind. Years later, high-resolution scans of the other photos Jim took that day revealed something the sheep theorists conveniently ignored. In the distant tree line, there weren't just shadows, there were shapes. Multiple beings positioned like a tactical team watching a suburban dad take a Polaroid. This wasn't a random sighting, it was a coordinated presence. Shortly after these visitors crashed the Blue Streak party, the entire multi-million-dollar missile program was abruptly canceled. The official reason? Budget cuts. The real reason? The evidence suggests the military realized they were testing toys in someone else's backyard, and the neighbors were getting annoyed. We're about to hit the final "oh crap" moment, where we reveal how this 1964 glitch is still dictating where you are and aren't allowed to go in the US today. But first, we need to address the silenced memo that suggests the spaceman never actually left. So, the Blue Streak program gets silenced, the missile is scrapped, and Jim Templeton's photo is relegated to the weird section of the internet. But here's the final oh crap moment. The evidence suggests the US government didn't just hide the spaceman to save face. They did it because they realized our cutting-edge military tech was basically a toddler's Lego set compared to the visitors. The CIA didn't want you to know that they weren't in control of the skies. They were just the ones responsible for cleaning up the nightmare on the launchpad. To this day, the Solway Firth Spaceman remains one of the few anomalies that hasn't been debunked by modern AI or digital forensics. It's a permanent restricted file in the cabinet of human history. The lesson? Humans never learn. We keep building bigger, louder toys, whether it's missiles in the 60s or AI today, and we act shocked when something other decides to photobomb our progress. We treat the universe like our private backyard, but the guys in the white suits are still out there, reminding us that we're just the ones mowing the lawn. The government didn't erase the evidence to protect the truth. They did it to protect their ego. Because at the end of the day, acknowledging the spaceman means admitting that the people in charge are just as clueless as a Karen trying to use a self-checkout lane. The next time you see a restricted sign at a national park or a no-fly zone over Nevada, just remember, they aren't keeping you out to protect the land. They're keeping you out because the photobombers never actually left.